Hey everyone, welcome back to K-Korner, the channel where we dive into the wild world of entitled people and their unbelievable stories. Hope you enjoy it, and without further ado, let's go. This story happened around 15 years ago, and English is my second language. I had just quit my BA in economics. It just wasn't right for me, and quickly needed a job while figuring out what to do while paying my bills. I found one in a call center. This center was a subcontractor for big companies. In my case, it was the second biggest telco company in the country, and they partially outsourced first and second level support for DTV, internet and phone services, to the company I worked for. The job was okay, not very demanding, hilarious interactions with customers and nice coworkers. But I soon discovered that management was just a bunch of inflated egos with glorious ideas but no talent. So after about a year, I was promoted to supervisor, just a flashy title for solving the shitty cases, no pay raise or other benefits. Apparently, I did a good job because 3 months later I got called into the office by the management team. Their plan was to form a training team, and they wanted me to lead it. At that point, I still didn't know what I wanted to do with my career, so I just said yes. And that's when the shit show started. They gave me a contract with no detailed job description, a fixed salary plus a monthly bonus which I can get by achieving certain milestones every month. When I asked what those milestones are, they just said they will define them every month. Okay, fine by me. As an employee with a fixed salary, I also had to report my hours every month to my assigned manager. Let's call him Frederick. So, here we go. As I said before, they had lots of fancy ideas, but no clue. I asked countless times what their plan was with that training department, what my tasks were, what my milestones are, and I only got some wishy-washy speeches about some great ideas. In the end, I was tasked with all sorts of nonsense, helping out with calls, best paid call center agent ever, designing signs for the center, where to find the toilet, for example, and stuff like that. They actually gave me so much nonsense work that I had to work overtime. But fine, I just do it, submit my report at the end of the month and figure out my life. There was just one thing that really pissed me off, the bonus. After the first payment, I noticed the bonus was missing. So I asked Frederick why. He said that we never defined the milestones, so I did not reach them. I am not stupid, and I know my rights. Fact is, he has to give me the milestones. If he does not, then there are none, and I am entitled to the bonus regardless. I could have made a fuss about it right then and there, but I decided to be quiet and just go with his nonsense. But I made sure to forward important mail about my role, salary, and bonus to my private mail. So this went on for about 6-7 months, until I had a pretty big accident which kept me in the hospital for 2 weeks, and then at home for another 6 weeks. The company had a habit of firing people after such a long absence, which is illegal but hard to prove. So I knew that the moment I came back, I would be fired. Sure enough, the day came, and as soon as I walked through the door with my pretty sign on it, I saw Frederick and the Har lady marching towards me. They escorted me into an office and told me I was fired immediately because they decided to close the training department. That never really existed in the first place. In my country, the notice period for both parties is usually 3 months, but it is possible to let someone go immediately. That means I still get 3 months' pay, but I'm not allowed to work there anymore. I happily signed the notice and they let me go to my office to pack up. Little did they know that I just went to prepare my farewell gift to them. I had already printed out everything, calculated my overtime and the missing bonuses. So 30 minutes later, I called the Har lady into the office and laid it all out. Due to the fact that they let me go immediately, they had to pay me the overtime plus a surcharge and, of course, all the bonuses plus 3 months' salary. All in all, it added up to over 15. The only thing the Har lady said was, "We didn't expect you to know the laws." I guess that was a slip-up. My dad just retired, and we had his retirement party last night. A lot of his former and current employees as well as family were there. A few people got up and gave a speech, and though I never worked for him, I told this story from about 12 years ago. A few people later told me I should share it here, so I'm brand new to Reddit, so sorry if I make mistakes or don't follow protocols. About 12 years ago, when I was in high school, I had the day off, so my dad invited me to go out to lunch with him the next day. Mom wouldn't be able to get off, so it was just going to be a daddy-daughter lunch date. The day of, just when I was going to get into the shower and get ready for the day, my dad calls and says something big has come up at work and we're going to have to postpone our lunch. But because this was a surprise event for him, he didn't bring anything to eat, so he asked me to stop by a Subway and grab him a sandwich and some chips and bring it to him at work. I was bummed, but said, okay. Instead of the nice sweater skirt combo I had planned on wearing, I put on a pair of old ripped jeans and a black t-shirt with a giant Nike logo across the front, as well as putting my hair into a messy ponytail under a black and red baseball cap. I picked up his food and drove off to his work. He operated, it sounds weird to put those into past tense after all these years, a hardware garden store. I got there, went to his office, and saw him behind the glass on the phone with lots of papers around him, and he looked frantic on his call and shuffling through the papers. I knocked on the glass, held up the bag with his food, and when he saw me, he gave me a thumbs up, and then jerked his thumb over his shoulder towards the employee break room, so I went there to put his food in the fridge. When I got there, there were 2 warehouse employees there. I'll call them Tom and Dan, and they told me that their biggest supplier had suddenly and unexpectedly gone out of business that day, and Dad was trying to see if he could snag any leftover inventory they might still have, as well as looking for a new supplier. We also made some idle chit-chat before I put Dad's lunch in the fridge and walked out the door. This is when the main villain of the story stepped in. I'll call her Karen, as that seems to be the norm around here. I got maybe 2 steps out the door when she grabbed my attention and asked where the doohickey was. At the time, I had no idea what a doohickey was, so I politely said, "I'm sorry, I don't work here. I'm just delivering food." She practically screamed, "Why won't you help me?" Then noticed the sign over the door that said employees only, and said, "What would you do in there if you don't work here?" Thinking she caught me or something. I said, "This is where I was told to bring the food, but I really don't work here, and I don't even know what a doohickey is." She then started berating me for not knowing what a doohickey was when I thought of Tom and Dan behind the door, and surely one of them would know what a doohickey was and where to find it. But when I turned to go in and get one of them, she loudly shrieked, "Why won't you help me? Don't bother your coworkers when you're right here." I don't know if it was because he was done on the phone or just was alerted by Karen's loud shrieking. But my dad came out of his office and asked what was going on. Karen quickly spoke up and said, "I'm trying to find a doohickey and she won't help me." Dad looked at her and said, "I'm sorry, but she's just delivering lunch. She probably doesn't even know what a doohickey is." I then told my dad that I tried to get Tom or Dan to come out and help her as I had no idea what a doohickey was. Karen's response was to tell Dad, "You should train the workers better." Dad's response was to say, "Again, she doesn't work here and she claims she tried to get you help. Did she or did she not?" Karen then said, "Why is everyone trying to cover for her?" As far as I know, she had only talked to me and Dad, so I don't know who everyone was. Dad then told her, "Doohickeys are on aisle 3, or you can maybe find one at Home Depot." He later told me that's the first time he ever suggested to a customer that they can go elsewhere, even if he had the item in stock or could get it there in a reasonable amount of time. He then told me what a doohickey was. Karen then stormed off to aisle 3, and later that evening, Dad told me she had bought a doohickey. Years later, when I was married and my husband and I got a house, Dad gave us a doohickey as a housewarming gift. I started laughing hysterically when I unwrapped it and saw what it was. It was a light sensor for outdoor lights, so they automatically come on when it's dark enough. My husband thought there was something wrong with me because I was laughing like crazy and could barely get out. "Did you find it on aisle 3, or did you have to go to Home Depot?" So, Dad is officially retired now. My older brother is taking over, and I know where to get a doohickey should I ever need one. I work as a manager in a call center. I am nowhere near the phones and generally do not interact with customers. Rather, I am a knowledge repository for my staff and handle communication between our team and the client company which we provide support for. We are a technical support team, not a sales or order support, and the devices which we support are very complex consumer electronics. Most of our support time goes to professional installers, and we rarely speak to customers firsthand. In short, my job is to know our policies like the back of my hand and to know the products we support better than anyone except the designers that engineered them. A secondary part of my job is to coordinate our online chat team, which is generally pretty hands-off other than write, as the shift ends when I generally jump in to monitor any active chats and make sure they close up quickly. I don't want to keep my guys here any longer than necessary. They like it better, and it cuts down on overtime hours for the entire line of business by a lot. This means I generally rack up 15, 20 minutes of overtime a day, though some days it can be as little as 0 and others as much as an hour. My direct boss knows all about this and is generally all for it. One day, however, the guy who was in charge of all the support teams, we work with many brands, sent out a memo that management should never be getting overtime. I brought this up with my boss, as this would seriously impact my team, who arranged a meeting with the big boss. Big boss proceeds to tell my boss that no, I cannot rack up any overtime hours. Fine. I get out at a reasonable time every day. I have zero issue with this. So the next Monday, I log out right when my shift ends. Turns out 3 of my guys were there for an extra hour with last-minute chats. Tuesday, nearly the same story. This continues all through the week. We are bleeding overtime hours for support staff, with most of my team getting nearly an hour of op per day. This goes on for a pay period when Big Boss comes back and tells us we were told to reduce out hours, and that we had somehow racked up even more than we had before. My boss backed me up and told the Big Boss that no, we were told to reduce management OT hours, and that I had indeed not racked up any overtime. Big Boss asks why OT hours increased, and I mentioned I stayed to make sure my team had the support they needed to get out as early as possible. Big Boss goes, well, that makes sense. Keep doing that, but add any overtime to your Friday lunch so you don't rack up overtime. I explain that I can do this, but will still probably get a bit of odd on Fridays, since the end of the shift is obviously after lunch. Again, cool. Long lunches are nice. This works well for a few weeks. I'm making sure I zero out my OT. But I knew it was only a matter of time before they regretted doing any of this. We were approaching the busy season and getting more and more long chats and calls. I made sure to get Big Boss to email and CC me and my boss this instruction directly. Sure enough, a few weeks later, Monday, I'm there for a whopping hour and 30 min trying to get one guy out the door. Tuesday for an hour, Wednesday for an hour 15, and to top it off, 2 whole hours on Thursday. It was a terrible week for the last-minute chats. I tally up my makeup time for my lunch, 5 hours and 45 minutes plus an hour for my normal lunch. I normally worked 4 hours, 1 hour lunch, then another 4 hours. So that Friday, I came in and explained the situation to my boss. He was cool with me working for only 2 hours and 15 min the whole day, because I was doing exactly what the Big Boss said to do. So an hour into my shift, I go on my 6 hour and 45 minute lunch. While I'm enjoying my most of the day siesta, the entire line of business is burning down. Chat is so busy we have people waiting 30 min to speak with someone. Calls are so busy we have 15 calls waiting. On days like this, I normally jump in the queues as I do not need to document every case like our tier ones have to, and I'm very good at my job. I can usually knock out a 15-20 min call for a tier 1 in 5 minutes or less. I can easily handle 4 or 5 chats at one time, seriously taking a load off that team. Now, I alone could not save this shift. No way. We were due for a hiring class, and were working on onboarding new tier 1s at the time. But man, does it look bad to the client when one of your key players is absent all but 2 hours and 15 min of one of the busiest days ever for our lob. I get back in, settle down at my desk right as the rush is clearing up. The damage was already done, and we were manageable for the rest of the day. Right at the end of my shift, I look and notice that there is no one on a chat and no queue, so I immediately log out and thank my team for working hard that day. Then Monday comes. I get to meet with the client, Big Boss, and my boss for our weekly meeting. The client is furious about how on Friday, one of our best assets was on a super long lunch break, and Big Boss puts me on the spot and asks why that was. My response was rehearsed. According to company policy established and agreed upon on date we met with the Big Boss, I am not to accrue overtime hours. Any hours over 8 worked within the work week must be made up during my lunch break on Fridays. Big Boss began denying it when my boss stepped in and was like, wait, I got an email about this. He pulls up the email Big Boss sent and shares it on screen in the meeting. Client is pissed, and the corporate rep begins ripping Big Boss a new one on the phone. After ripping into Big Boss, The Corps rep speaks to me, telling me to accrue as many hours as needed to make sure my job is done, and that if my company wants to retain this line of business, Big Boss is not to interfere with my generally very successful management without consulting them and myself. Since then, Big Boss has continued to try to interfere and change how I run my line. However, every time so far, the corporate rep has had my back. They are extremely happy with my work and know I do a great job. Heck, they even pushed through a large raise for me when Big Boss was blocking my boss's attempts to get me more money. I've been babysitting 2 little girls, 3 and 5, for over a year now. I have known their parents since I was a child. I'm 20, one now, and we get along very well. A month ago, I decided to dye my hair in a red-brownish color. When I babysat them, they loved it. Their parents are quite okay with little girls playing with makeup and fashion. So when I was done babysitting, I asked the mom if I could bring some fun fashion things to play with the next time. That next time was last week. When I got there, I opened my beauty case and showed them what I got. Necklaces, costumes, hair ties, makeup, frozen perfume, and pink hair dye. I asked both of their parents if it was okay for me to dye their hair pink since it's their favorite color. I informed them that it was a temporary hair dye designed for kids, and it could be washed out immediately. So, it was pretty much harmless. The parents laughed a bit with me and told me it was fine, but they specifically asked me to put them in a bath without washing their hair. I guess they wanted to see it the next morning. They said goodbye and told me that, crazy ass, Grandma would come home around midnight to pay me lay-dee-day-dee-dee-da. Some amazing how-toocher hours later, the doorbell rang. It was only around 9 p.m. and the girls were still awake. I put them in their bathrobes and night diapers. I was getting them ready for bed, and put them in front of the TV and went to open the door. It was Grandma Karen. She was almost 3 hours early. Without even saying hello, she entered, almost knocked me over, and while walking to the living room, she opened her purse to get a 50-euro bill. As soon as she wanted to hand me the bill, she saw their pink hair and lost her damn marbles. What in Jesus and Mary have you done to my babies? Oh, don't worry, we just played fashionistas. It's okay, it can be washed out. Runs to girls and starts screaming hysterically. What has she done to your beautiful golden hair? Ma'am, it's okay, Mom. And Dad, know about I? Shut up. Who do you even think you are to just come here and assault my babies? Proceeds to scream at me for a couple more minutes. This is child abuse. I'm calling the police on you, you effing child molester. Okay, so at this point I started to freak out. Even though I knew I didn't do anything wrong, the thought of being interrogated made me almost shit my pants. She freaking held me hostage in the living room while continuing her screaming and moaning. She even wrinkled the 50-euro bill like toilet paper and shoved it down her pocket. Curse words after curse words left her mouth. Oh my God, I can't believe Mom would even hire someone like you. You probably have a criminal record, don't you? I hope you freaking get 20 years in prison, you racist slur. You ruined my baby's life. You traumatized them. This is child abuse. The police are on their way. Evil smirk. You will never find a job again. Oh, babies. Did that hurt you? She did, didn't she? Oh my God. Did she also cut it? I didn't. You've probably been assaulting them for months now, hun. Think about the most Karen you know. Double her age and shorten her hair. That's what I had to deal with for almost half an hour. Oh, and she also said that coloring my hair like a prostitute was a bad influence for kids in general. She continued to scream at me, accusing me of assault and child abuse. Suddenly, she grabbed my arm roughly, yanking me towards the bathroom. In a moment of panic and defiance, I grabbed the pink dye from my beauty case. If you think this is assault, then let's see what you think of this, I shouted, spraying some of the pink dye on her hair. Grandma Karen's eyes widened in shock and fury. You wretch. What have you done to me? She screamed, her face turning redder than the dye. As expected, she grabbed her phone and called the police, screaming about being attacked by a crazy babysitter. The police arrived shortly after, accompanied by a K-Korner officer. The girls' parents also arrived, having been texted by me during the chaos. The officers listened to both sides of the story. Grandma Karen was still ranting, her hair streaked with pink. Officer, this is a temporary washable hair dye, I explained, handing over the bottle. It's designed for kids and can be washed out easily. The police officers, trying to hide their amusement, asked Grandma Karen to wash her hair to prove it. She reluctantly did, and the dye washed out completely. Her fury turned into embarrassment. The officers left after confirming everything was fine. The parents were furious with Grandma Karen for causing such a scene. They apologized profusely to me and reassured me that I had done nothing wrong. Grandma Karen stormed out, humiliated. The girl's parents offered to pay me double for the trouble, and I accepted, though the night had been emotionally draining. As I left, I felt a mixture of relief and triumph. I had stood up for myself, and though it had been chaotic, the girls had enjoyed their fashion adventure. And Grandma Karen would think twice before attacking anyone again. Enjoying the stories yet? If you do, please subscribe, like, and comment. I'm not one to usually share my stories, but this one is too good not to. I'm sure you've all heard of entitled people, but have you ever come face to face with one? Well, I have, and let me tell you, it was an experience. Let me give you a bit of backstory. My name is Rachel, and I'm a freelance writer. I've been working from home for years now, and I'm a bit of a homebody. I enjoy my alone time, but I also love to be social. So, when my friend Sarah invited me to a get-together at her place, I jumped at the chance. The get-together was in a posh area of town. Sarah's apartment was on the 10th floor, and the views were breathtaking. The party was going great until an entitled woman arrived. She was wearing designer clothing from head to toe and had a look of superiority on her face. She strutted in as if she owned the place and demanded a drink. I tried to ignore her, but she was loud and obnoxious. She then proceeded to ask Sarah who I was, and before I knew it, she was standing in front of me, introducing herself. "Hi, I'm Tiffany," she said, sticking out her hand. "What do you do?" "I'm a writer," I said, shaking her hand. "Oh, that's cute," she said with a smirk. "What do you write about?" "I write about a variety of topics," I reply, trying to be polite. "Well, I'm sure it's not as exciting as my job," she said, flipping her hair. "I work in finance." I rolled my eyes, not wanting to engage in a conversation with her. But Tiffany wasn't done with me yet. She started to complain about the food and drinks and demanded that Sarah get her something else. "I can't believe you didn't have caviar," she said with a huff. "This is just unacceptable." I couldn't help but let out a sarcastic comment. "Yeah, Sarah, why don't you have a bowl of caviar sitting around in case someone like Tiffany shows up?" Tiffany shot me a glare, clearly not amused by my comment. But I didn't care. I was sick of her entitled behavior and was ready to call her out on it. As the night went on, Tiffany only got worse. She started to make snide comments at the decor and the music. And when she found out that Sarah's apartment didn't have a doorman, she was livid. "I can't believe I have to take the elevator with commoners," she said, rolling her eyes.
I had had enough.
I stood up, ready to leave, but Tiffany had other plans. "Where do you think you're going?" she said, blocking my way. "I'm leaving," I said, trying to push past her. "You can't leave," she said, putting her hands on her hips. "I haven't finished talking to you." "I don't want to talk to you," I said, getting frustrated. "Well, too bad," she said with a smirk. "I need someone to talk to, and you're the only one here." I was about to lose my cool when Sarah came to my rescue. She told Tiffany that it was time to leave and to never come back. Tiffany stormed out, but not before she tried to take Sarah's designer purse. "You're not taking that?" I said, grabbing the purse out of her hand. Tiffany got angry and attempted to take the purse by force, but I held on tight. She then resorted to lying, claiming that Sarah had stolen the purse from her. But luckily, Sarah had the receipt and the authenticity card to prove that it was hers. Tiffany stormed out, still fuming. But as she left, she made a parting shot at me. "You're just a jealous loser," she said with a sneer. I rolled my eyes, not taking her words to heart. I knew who I was and didn't need her validation. After Tiffany left, the party continued and we all had a great time. But the experience with Tiffany stayed with me. It made me realize how lucky I was to have genuine friends who didn't care about status or wealth. From that day on, I made a promise to myself to never let someone like Tiffany affect me again. And if I ever came across another entitled person, I would stand up for myself and others. In the end, Tiffany might have tried to take what she wanted by force and lied to get her way, but I came out on top. And I didn't need designer clothes or caviar to do it. All I needed was my wit and a strong sense of self. Okay, I know this is long, but I hope it's a fun read. I do have to be careful because two of these people have rather high profiles on the internet, and one is really well known. I didn't include as many details as I would have liked because they could be easily identified. So on with what I hope are the juicy details. Over 10 years ago, I worked for a company owned by a married couple whom we will refer to as the McGrifties. The wife told her first lie to me during the job interview, not the last, though. She mentioned an employee who would be going on maternity leave and said that we knew she was pregnant when we hired her. I later heard from the pregnant employee herself, just in passing, that she didn't know she was pregnant when she started working there. Just a stupid lie so they could look like nicer people than they were. The employee turnover was insane. There were micromanagers who treated their employees horribly. One guy submitted his 2-week notice the week before we had a 2-day holiday, and they made it effective immediately, thus screwing him out of pay for those days. Going to the bathroom. Be sure to log that in time since they need to know you spent every minute. Their employee reviews mention words like toxic, terrible, and wish I could forget I work there. We once had some overflow work and they had me find someone to handle it. Literally, the first person I called turned me down flat. She had already done work for them and had to take them to court to get paid and still didn't recover all she was owed. I had complained to a few coworkers regarding an ongoing issue with our 400 on-egg contributions to our accounts along with a few other issues. It got back to management and I was fired. I was a really good employee but was tired of being treated not just poorly, but with great suspicion. They assumed everyone was out to screw them, which will tell you something about their own approach to other people. At that point, I didn't care, but when they got my unemployment denied because someone sent me an email, that really pissed me off. Yeah, that was a crappy decision by the commission, but they bought that crap anyway. The woman at the commission actually asked me in the snottiest voice, just how did that person, a former employee, know my email? Yeah, lady, he used to work there. He knew everyone. Here's some petty revenge to tide you over. Not terribly long after that, one of my former coworkers sent me a copy of the wife's mugshot. Apparently, she had been pulled over for a traffic violation. Things went sideways and she was arrested. I wasn't a bit surprised because she was always an entitled witch who thought rules didn't apply to her. Over the next few days, I went to several different places with fax services and sent her mugshot to the company's fax number. I also went by at night to tape some up around their office building. So here we are many years later, and about a year ago, I was reading some gossip columns about celebrities and saw a familiar name. One of the McGrifties' offspring has become engaged to a celebrity worth double-digit millions. Of course, my curiosity was sparked, so I thought I would see if they were even in business any longer. I turned to my friend Google and found they are, defying all logic and justice, indeed still in business. However, I also discovered the delightful news that the husband was in the middle of an active bankruptcy. I could only see docket entries, which include a motion for emergency sale of their homestead. Wondering if they had managed to sell their $1 million-plus home, I popped over the county assessor's website and looked up their address. They still showed as owners, but when I checked ownership history, I saw that title had been transferred a few months before. Okay, so they did sell a house to an LLC. Interesting. I am on alert. I decided to look a little closer at MB and find their Instagram account. Well, what do you know? The Instagram name is almost the same name that took title to the McGrifties' house. Now, I'm very interested, and I really need to know what the house sold for. I am suspicious by nature, and I know these people. Besides smelling a rat, I also smell an opportunity to drop some karma on them. I did a little more digging and finally hit gold with a 72-page document that includes every lion and judgment against them. And there are lots. They have judgments against them from 2 different banks, one for around $2 million and another over $500,000. Their house went into foreclosure some months back, and they owed $400,000 more than the property was worth. I also found a notice from the state commission that they owe an employee $3. The sweetest, though, is that they have close to $2 million in IRS tax lines against them. All told, they were close to $4 million in debt. I was overjoyed. The best part, however, was the much-desired and lovely copy of the sales contract, which shows the sales price is more than 500 and below the appraised value. The motion also states that the husband says this is a good sales price. Yeah, for the buyer, his future XX-in-law. He doesn't care since he isn't getting a nickel of the money. It's all going to the mortgage company who agreed to settle for the sales price. No, I'm no bankruptcy attorney. But this looks shady as heck to me, and as a tax-paying citizen, I feel compelled to report what I believe might be fraud. I copied the tax roll showing properties in that area rarely sell for under $1 million, and their property was valued at over $1.3 million. I also included a screenshot of MB's Instagram page announcing the engagement and showing the Instagram name was pretty much the same as the purchaser. One last thing I found was a little blurb, along with their picture in the Rich Neighborhood Happenings publication mentioning the McGrifties hosted an intimate get-together for 30 at some nightclub around the holidays, after the husband filed for bankruptcy, and all while asking the court to discharge millions upon millions in debt. Just for fun, I took a screenshot of that too. I sent copies of all to the bankruptcy judge, bankruptcy trustee, and lawyers for the mortgage company, along with a nice cover letter pointing out a few other inconsistencies. Then I sit back and wait. After a bit of thought, I decide the information I have is too special not to be shared with others. Now, the wife considers herself a mover and a shaker in the higher echelons of the business world, when in truth, she's just a pretentious wanna-be and a broke one at that. I must give her credit, though. She has a large internet presence and has promoted herself quite effectively. A lot of that is based on something she did a while back that brought her a lot of attention at the time, and she played it up to the hilt. Funny thing, though, I believe that very same accomplishment is what started the downward financial spiral, since it was a very expensive endeavor that doesn't seem to have paid off as they had hoped. Several websites list the company's revenue at $5-10 million a year, but it's a lie. Less than 2 years ago, the company had a total of $391.37 in the only corporate bank account. Gotta love those bankruptcy records. That kind of blatant nonsense really cheeses me off, so I sent copies of all the judgments and highlighted the part where Mrs. said they were broke and drowning in debt to the chair of some Ivy League college women's board that she belongs to and pays $20 a year to be a member. I also sent copies to someone in politics with whom the wife had curried a suck-up relationship for years. I'll eventually get around to sending something to D&B so they can make a correction. After about a week, I checked the docket sheet and just about fell out of my chair laughing. There, on the bankruptcy court docket sheet, was response to order filed by Avenging Witch. Not really, but you get the picture. Although I was highly amused, I was also a bit freaked out because I really didn't expect it to become part of the public record. However, I did expect there to be some sort of blowback. They're currently being sued for non-payment of rent by a past landlord, their second time for this sort of thing. The first time they stopped paying rent, they were locked out of the premises, but according to court docs, picked the lock and moved their possessions out in the middle of the night. Landlord sued and was granted a 45 judgment against them that they actually paid. They eventually quit paying rent to the new landlords, and that is the case still in court. Since they broke their lease, they could be on the hook for around $400. Concerned for their current landlord, I made sure to send them evidence of their tenants' propensity for stiffing their landlords and warned them not to let them get too fast past due. While looking over the filings of their current court case, I discovered a few inconsistencies. For example, the wife wrote in an email to the landlord that she was working to settle her debt with the IRS and that had to be a priority. The debt that was dismissed in bankruptcy. She also claimed that they had employees that had been there since the company started, which is true, Mr. and Mrs. McGrifty. I am 99% sure they are the only one. I shared that information with the plaintiff's attorney and suggested they were being rather disingenuous, such a lovely word for liar. Oh, and that document, too, became part of the public record. I do take great satisfaction in knowing that they are now aware that someone is keeping track of their misfortunes and actively seeking to make them worse. Oh goodness, that reminds me. Shortly after I discovered all this information, I sent them a condolence card telling them I had heard of their tax liens and judgments, and it couldn't have happened to two more deserving people. Signed it Karma, Jerks. As for me, great things happened after I left the McGrifties. I did get my unemployment. Took a job that ended when my new boss resigned, but it was just long enough to qualify. Pretty sure the McGrifties ended up being on the hook for most of it after all. I then went to work for a wonderful guy who paid for me to go back to college, finish my bachelor's, and get a master's degree. As an undergrad, I co-wrote 2 papers with an awesome professor that were published in peer-reviewed journals. I've saved a nice sum of money, own a lake house, and look forward to retiring in a few years and enjoying myself, all while the McGrifties basically have nothing. The offspring did marry Mam recently, so I guess they'll have the hope that some of that money will migrate over to them, or they can get Emmy to invest in their failure of a company. Let's hope there's a prenup. Thanks for hanging in there and hope you found it worth a read. This happened about a year ago. It's not really an aggravating story, but still a good one, I think. I'm currently in my apprenticeship as an aid expert in a company that builds anything regarding networks. Telephone systems, safety cameras, data centers, Windows domains, firewalls, nurse call. You call it, we make it. Most of our customers are medical facilities of some sort, mainly rest homes for old people. And during my apprenticeship, I'm supposed to work with the other departments of our company to get a feeling for what we do. That time, I was working in a rest home for old people, replacing their out-of-date fire alarm system. Most of the time when we do work like this, the places aren't closed, so we naturally come into contact with the nurses or their residents. This time, the nurses and other staff of the place were extremely friendly to us. They offered us a room in the basement to store our stuff, another room with couches and furnished like your old people living room for breaks, and even allowed us to get to their canteen and get food for free, at lunchtime. We got the same food the residents got and usually took our meals to the living room that was provided to us. One day, as I was standing in line to get my food, one of their residents approached me with an expression somewhere between, "Please help me," and "Where am I?" I have some experience with dementia and Alzheimer's, and could tell that this guy had something in that spectrum, just from the look he gave me. As he came into reach, he grabbed my arm with a strength you'd not expect from a man of his age, and began to hastily tell me to bring him to his car. He kept going, saying that he was told to eat his meal before someone picks him up and get him home. For a moment, I was just as confused as he was, given I was clearly wearing my work pants and even the jacket with the name of our company. Then I remembered some stories my sister told me, who's coincidentally working as a nurse for dementia patients. I kept calm and put my plate away, turning to the old man and made my biggest mistake of that day. I tried to explain to him that I'm just a technician and that he should get one of the nurses. Of course, he was too far away to understand what I'm saying and kept asking me about the car that's supposed to get him and that I should bring him there. We kept going back and forth like this for a moment until another resident, an old lady with all her mental capacity intact, approached us and handled the situation much better than I did. She began asking him about the meal he mentioned, keying his hand and leading him back to where he came from. I didn't see how their situation ended, but from how she managed him, I guess it was much better than my experience. Thanks for joining us. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe for more captivating stories. Share your own experiences, opinions in the comments below, and let's keep the conversation going. Until next time, stay tuned for more epic tales.